Home sellers, are you thinking about selling your home, but you really have no idea where to start? Is it a daunting list that you have to deal with? Well, we're here to help you here with the Realtors Playbook. I'm Matt Witte from the William Ravis real estate team in Andover, Massachusetts, and I'm with Debbie Lucci. She's in the same office, runs her own team, and we are here to help give you some guidance and some clarity on what you should be doing. So, Debbie, what do you think? So you sit down with a seller and what do you give them, a list, or what do you do?
Well, I think one of the things is I think people think that, okay, I'm going to sell in the spring market, so I'll contact a realtor then. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. They should actually start thinking in January or February to get the realtor in. So that's what we can do. We can take a look at their house and really kind of give them an objective eye. It's hard when, I've always said realtors are the worst sellers themselves because they can't be objective. But sellers can't be objective on their own homes as well. So, we're just there to kind of help them through that process. And it doesn't have to be. It could be as small as paint. It could be as small as decluttering. It depends on their budget, what they want to do, and really what the house looks like. It could be as small as taking all those wall of family photos down so that now that the buyer can envision their home. But I think one of the mistakes that sellers make all the time is they wait too long. They all wait for that spring market, and that's when the competition comes on the heaviest. And then everybody is in a rush and stress, and painters are busy, plumbers are busy, roofers are busy, everybody's busy at that time. So you've got to plan ahead, and I think that's one of the biggest things that they can do. So we kind of talked about a little bit, how to pick a realtor. And, maybe now it's like when to pick a realtor. So I don't think it's ever too early. I really don't. Even if you're thinking of selling 2 years down the road, I think it's a good idea to get somebody out. So what are your thoughts on all
Definitely,
that?
and that's a really good. I agree. That's a really good feeling, I think, for a seller to know, like, all right, now we have the listing agreement signed. Maybe we're a year or two away, but we can proactively work together. It's almost like it's like free, but not free. Free consultation,
Mhm.
right? All the way up to including, instead of scrambling, picking someone, trying to get painters, like you said, but you can't because they're too busy, so on and so forth. So if someone was thinking of selling, how early should they contact a realtor?
I don't think it's ever too early. I mean, even if it's 5 years down the road, like I had a gentleman call me yesterday and he's like, I'm thinking about doing my kitchen over. Okay, my first question is going to be, well, how long are you going to stay in the house? And then then he said to me, well, I'm probably going to stay, maybe 5 years. Okay, fine. All right, now, how much do you want to invest in that kitchen? You can invest $350,000 in that kitchen. Are you going to get that money back?
Mhm.
All right, so things like that, there are big investments that you want to know you can get back. But right now, if you're thinking about this particular spring market, which a lot of people are right now, which is a great opportunity, they should be contacting their realtors really right now. And you and I have talked about this. The realtors they should be going for are the realtors that are educated in a market previous to COVID.
Mhm.
They should the real estate agent should be either educated with a market previous to COVID, or they should be trained enough that they know how to handle this market, because this is not a COVID market anymore.
Exactly. All the negotiation we talked about in the last podcast is critical, and that carries right over. I know when I meet with sellers, the non-negotiable is you have to declutter. You
Mhm.
have to. You have no choice. The painting, I highly recommend. That they're definitely gonna make money off the painting, and most will deal with the painting. They don't love it because you imagine they got 4 kids. They're trying to get out. It can be super hard. Even decluttering, like, where do I put everything? We talk about storage, and they said, I don't want to have to drive back and forth. I tell them just stuff the garage. I mean, if we have to, we have to.
Exactly. So think about so we were on Al's coaching call the other day, you and I, and there was a timeline of when he was talking about things. I think the thing is people think, oh, I'm going to put the house on in March or April. I'll deal with it then. How many weeks or months is it going to take you to get that house ready? So if you call a realtor out now, and let's say you're thinking about putting the house on the market in March, you literally only have weeks to get that house ready. So instead of panicking and waiting till the last minute, it's best to call a realtor, I think, as soon as possible out there. So if you put the house on the market in, let's say, March, you could be closing on that house June, July. So that's how long it takes. So, and I think that people seeing that, people don't realize how long it takes. So what do you think? Um, what do you think is the biggest bang for the buck regarding getting a house ready?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a tall order. We know we Debbie and I know that to just we don't show up and say, okay, in 4 weeks you list it. I mean, people have jobs. They can't necessarily just get the house ready, and stop working and things like that. So it's quite a bigger process than I think a lot of people uh might think.
Also, you have to take advantage of that coming soon advertising.
And how
That's
does that
key.
work?
All right, so I think people don't really realize the huge advantage of that, So you picture like, picture for example, if you owned a restaurant, you would never just open the doors to a restaurant and say, "I'm here." There would be
Mm.
this big buildup so that that when you open the doors, there would be a line out the door. And I think regarding real estate, it's the same thing. If you just put the house on the market and you haven't given that realtor any opportunity to do coming soon advertising, you've really missed the market. So we send a newsletter out to about 17,000 people. We have it all over social media, coming soon advertising. We put it on different top agent sites where the house will be seen by top agents, um, and that's what really starts it. And if it gives it that big buildup, so when the house hits the market, that you'll get the
Mhm.
most money for it. And I think if you're rushing and you don't call a realtor to the last minute, and now you're starting to, if you wait really long, you may be bucking up against a spring market, I mean, a summer market, which is a little bit slower. It's not a bad market, it's just a little bit slower. So you've lost your opportunity there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes total sense. And let me ask you this. Let's say, because I did kind of use ChatGPT as we often do, and it talked about repairs and maintenance that home sellers should consider. And that can be really, really challenging because, life gets in the way. And as you're a homeowner, and there's so many things that you say, oh, maybe I'll get to that at a later time. And for whatever reason, you don't. And we want to pretty much try to find what must be done. So is there things that are glaring to you that say, you know what, that can't be in that condition? That has to be repaired or that has to be fixed. So I'll throw one example out because I see this a lot and I know you do. The windows, let's say you did replacement windows, 20 years ago, and they're vinyl, but they're older and they still work and they're fine. But you have some that have what's called a broken seal. So
Right.
it's cloudy, it still functions. It's not dangerous or anything like that. It's not going to shatter. But do you? Let's say there's two windows out of 20. Do you recommend to the seller like, hey, you should really get those replaced? What do you think? Something like that.
So I think they have to be replaced or disclosed, one of the two, so that seller doesn't get hit up for the cost. And I think it comes down to how much
Okay.
time that seller has given the agent to put the house on the market and what the cost is going to be. So there's a different things to look at. I mean, if you've given that agent no time to put that house on the market because, now, and and think about this, Matt, how many holidays are there in the spring? You've got Easter, you've got Mother's Day, you've got a few other holidays going on. You don't want to just wait so long that now we're working around holidays. You've also got school vacations. All right, so make sure you
Hmm.
you give yourself enough time. And I think it comes down to if they have not, if they have, I have no problem disclosing it. I just don't want the seller to be hit up for the cost of it. And then you get a price on it, so you know what it costs to repair it. But I think if you have the opportunity, it's always better to get it replaced. It looks better.
Definitely. And that's coming up with a nice punch list of items that a either maybe a handyman can come in and do and say, look, I have 15 things for you to do. I'm selling my house next year. That gives the handyman time to come in, order parts, schedule, get it done, so on and so forth, as opposed to I'm listing in 6 weeks. Can you do these 15 things? Which is highly unlikely.
Right, exactly. So now really think about it from a buyer's point of view. They walk in the door and they see seals broken on a house. They're going to be like, how many other windows are going to be let go that I'm going to have to fix?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And the punch list is always a little bit tricky. What about staging? Do you recommend staging for home sellers?
I definitely we do a staging consult on every single home we go into. There's some people that don't need it. We still send the stager in just for a second set of eyes, but we always have a stager going in. And we've had there's been like a case study that we actually did. This house was on the market in North Andover, and the agent had it on. The house was vacant, and the agent put it on, and what happened is the house didn't sell, and they ended up getting an offer something like, I think it was like 830 or something like that, finally, for the house, and the offer fell through. So we came in, and we tightened. There was some rugs that were loose in the basement. We got the house clean, we tightened the rugs. The seller was open to doing a little bit of staging, and so there was furniture in the house now. House sold for over 900,000, and that was a black and white case because it was the same exact address at the same
Hmm.
exact period of time. So, I'm not always going to say you're going to
Yeah, that's
get
amazing. And
that
I
much
pulled,
money.
I yeah, yeah, and it's good. It could be one of those things where even if they made a little bit more, they may not have made that had they not staged it. And I actually pulled up an article on Realtor.com that just came out a couple of weeks ago, and it said on average, stage homes sell 88% faster and for
Yeah.
20% more than a non-staged home. So,
Yeah, that's what we
someone
have
might
for,
say,
we have for stats 95% faster and 17% higher.
"Oh, okay, good." And those are pretty close
Yes.
to what I see here. Yeah, and think about this: we're in a good seller's market. It's not always that way, so you need those advantages. And I have talked to home sellers that say, I just all my money's tied up in the house. I can't stage it. So what we do is we virtually stage it, which is
Mhm.
cost effective and it looks very nice online. It gives the buyers a sense of what it could look like, and it's certainly not as good as staging, but it's uh, it's a nice secondary option for home sellers.
Yeah, the other thing too is if you can get the stager to agree with, they can get paid out of the closing out of the closing costs at the end. So that could happen too
Yeah, that's
if you have,
smart. That's a really good idea.
right. So there's options.
Absolutely. Um, definitely. Now, what about this? This came up in the list as well. What about getting a home inspection before putting the property on the market?
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea for the sellers, and you don't have to get a full blown home inspection. You can get just and then you should follow the seller should follow the home inspector around, because there's things wrong with your house that you don't even know are wrong. And what if you got mold in the attic, certain mold in the basement, you've got structural issues you don't know about. These are going to be deal killers, and home inspections are coming back. So instead of the house going on the market and then maybe coming back on the market, or the buyer try to negotiate really heavy during the home inspection, you know ahead of time what's going to happen, and you can get it repaired or fixed. And this is like deal breaking type things. I think if you're negotiating, if the buyer's negotiating home inspection issues, the price is going to be a lot higher than if you get them repaired in the beginning. And then also, if something comes up, It also gives you, not major, but it might give you an opportunity to disclose it to the buyer so they know ahead of time and they're not going to come back and try to renegotiate. Like the age of the windows, the age of the furnace. Some people don't know the ages of things. If you have a home inspector come in, you can say the furnace is approximately this age, or the AC unit's approximately this age. So it's good for disclosure too.
Now let's talk a little bit about disclosures. I've been getting in a little bit better habit of asking way more questions to the seller, and I think he was a pretty honest guy, but he forgot there was a very small portion of knob and tube wiring in the attic. And it was a tough attic to get into. It's not like it was a walk up or anything like that. And then, sure enough, the home inspection happened and we had to deal with that knob and tube issue. So being upfront with it and saying, oh, yeah, we have knob and tube. I had the house inspected again prior to listing because I hadn't, done so in a while. People forget, and it's hard to remember every little detail if you've been in a house for 30 years. So an inspection is a good reminder of things that could have happened 30 years ago and nothing has happened since, or even some new stuff.
Right. So, kind of going back a little bit to the timeline, let's say if you contact a realtor now, then you have your kind of your honey-do list that could take 4 to 6 weeks. Then you put the house on the market, and then the house is going to be 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer out than that. Now, also think about, what if you have to sell your house to buy? You really want to come on the market early, so when you're in a position now to buy, the inventory is heavier. So this process could go on even longer than that. So that's why, I don't think it's ever too early.
Yeah, I would agree. And let's say that you had met with the seller last year
Yeah.
and you're ready to list, that everything is ready to go. And now there's 2 inches of snow out there. And they say, Debbie, my house is gorgeous in the spring. You took the spring photos last year. Why would I list my house now with the snow? It just looks raw. I don't want people coming in my house. Should I just wait to the spring market while I get more money? What would you say to that?
All right, so we did this specifically on 39 Hawkins in North Andover. They had their backyard was like an estate setting. It was absolutely stunning, and we took pictures ahead of time. And that's also a good idea to do when your house looks the best, is have a realtor over to take pictures of the house. So when you're ready to go on, you've got this. So we put that house on in February because they were finally ready to go. They had some conservation issues they were dealing with, and they were finally ready to go. And they did really well because there was no competition. Everybody waits for the spring market, and there's more houses that are on the spring market. You have more competition. And if you do it well, it still should be one weekend. If you price it well and have the right realtor to market it, it should be a little bit maybe over one weekend that you're dealing with this. You're not having people come in and out of the house, for several months. So I think it's a great time to sell the house right now. I think you've got a window of opportunity.
Okay, good. And it's something interesting that you said, that if it's done right, it could be
Yes.
a 5 or 6 day
Mhm.
affair. And one of my favorite things to tell sellers at this time of year is, I'll say, let's just say it's a husband wife, just so people can kind of paint the picture. I'll say, you guys really look like you deserve a vacation. You've earned it. Where do you guys want to go? And they'll say, oh, we haven't actually gone in a while. We love North Conway. Oh, you should go. And this is the exact week. You should
Right.
take the kids
Exactly.
with you. And that
Right.
makes it so easy, so
Yeah.
much
And we're not
easier.
bothering you. Yeah. It's much easier. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then after the showings, yeah, we'll say the showings end, let's say 5 p.m. The cleaners can come in, clean everything up. They come back, let's say Monday morning, and we're starting to talk about offers.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So all good. Let's see. So I'm going to pull up ChatGPT and just see if there's anything that we missed. What about something here? It says legal and paperwork. Do you talk to the sellers about attorneys and things to expect?
Well, I mean, especially if you've got, if it's an estate or something like that, we've had one recently, we were supposed to close it in the fall. It didn't get closed till January because it didn't go through probate. So I do think I think it's in the seller's best interest to talk to also an attorney, ahead of time so they know what's going on and what to expect and things like that. And also, one of the things that I think it's good to speak with a realtor ahead of time is there's different options in an offer. Not every
Hmm.
offer is going to come back with no home inspection. And, we have a list of different options that realtors usually put in their offers, and, discuss those ahead of time and what's important and what's not important to them. Is an appraisal important to you? That's the other thing that, we've been dealing with too, is appraisals that are way off. We had one that was $140,000 off that we were negotiating.
Right. That's a massive amount.
It
I've
is.
never heard of such a thing. That's insane.
Yeah, I know. So
Now
there's a
what
lot
what
of
if,
hiccups that can happen.
definitely. What if a home seller says this, cuz had them say this to me. I I don't need an attorney. Um the buyer, the buyer and their lender, I can just kind of piggyback off their attorney. I don't want to
Then,
pay for an extra fee. What would you say to that?
then they're representing themselves. They have to remember that they're representing themselves. We're not lawyers, so they're going to be dealing directly with that buyer's attorney at that time. And what happens is, and this, I've seen this happen several times. All of a sudden, the seller gets in over their head because they're dealing with an attorney that this is what they do full time. And now at the last minute, they're saying, you know what, I think I need an attorney. So now what they've done is they're slowing the whole process down by doing something like that. The P&S doesn't get signed in time, the appraisal doesn't get ordered, that affects the commitment date, and it could possibly affect the closing. So I always think, I always think attorneys, they should hire an attorney, in my opinion. Let the attorney do their job.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I would think from a buyer's attorney standpoint, knowing there's no representation, they
Oh,
may put in additional language that just 100% protects their buyer from every little single detail possible, where the
right.
seller's attorney would step in and know, like, nope, that's not standard language. We're not putting that in there, so on and so forth. And I always
So
tell
Matt,
sellers, biggest transaction of your life. You can cut a million different things, but let's not cut out the attorney.
all right, so let's say, Matt, what if he puts in there that there has to be permits for everything in the house? And you didn't have permits a lot of people don't have permits for everything. Okay. Then all of a
Yep.
sudden you made that mistake, and that's going to be a lot of time. That you want to talk about a timeline. That's going to be a lot of time getting that out there and fixed and things like that.
Oh my goodness. Imagine. Yeah. I mean, things behind walls, that you just, a permit inspector can't see anything, you
Right.
know, open everything up. I mean, that could be frightening. Imagine if an attorney had put that in there, and they could, right? They have the right to put that in there.
It's funny because when I've trained new agents, I remember one of them in particular, she said, there's just so many moving parts in a real estate transaction. I said, I know it looks very easy. It looks very simple, but there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of people involved. Like, let's say, for example, you change the closing date. Do you know how many people have to know that you've changed that closing date? I mean, the banks, the attorneys, the agents, the admin. I mean, it's a lot of, and that's just one change.
Yeah. Let alone the movers,
Hmm.
all the utility companies that you already call. I mean, there's a lot.
Exactly, exactly. And you think about it. If you come back and there's home inspection issues, you have to hire a licensed professional. You have to have a paid receipt for closing, and that electrician usually just doesn't show up like tomorrow. They take time. So there's quite a few moving parts. But I think you're right when we're talking about the pre-home inspection. I love those because I think it makes the transaction go so much smoother. You know.
Yes. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You can button everything up. And do you recommend a seller um, leave that out during an open house to try to induce buyers waiving the inspection. You know, saying, "Hey, I already had my home inspected. RJ Home Inspections did it. They're very reputable. Go ahead and have a read. Take a look. I already buttoned everything up there that's on that list. Anything highlighted, I already fixed."
It's kind of like, um, I think if you had five different home inspectors come in, there'd be five different reports. So I kind of get
Mm.
nervous about doing something like that. I use it more for big ticket items. You know, if there was mold in there, now there's not going to be mold anymore. So it's if the house is not going to go back on the market. Also, we've had houses where you know, they're in rough shape. I mean, really rough shape. Seller doesn't have a lot of money to fix anything. You know, I had one particular house that I'm thinking of. I mean, you walk in the door and you'd be afraid of this house, and
Yeah.
it was a sticky situation where, you know, the two parties couldn't agree. Nothing was going to get done. So what I did was I said to them, I'm going to encourage you to have the buyers do a pre-home inspection. So that they did a pre-home inspection. They knew what they were buying because I didn't want this house to go on, off the market. That's what was going to happen. This house was in rough shape. And
Hmm.
so we probably had five or six different people do pre-home inspections. They knew what they were buying, now put an offer in. They could cross out the home inspection language, and that's how we kind of dealt with it. But
Hmm.
that was a big hurdle because that house, they couldn't get a faucet fixed between the two of them. Never mind the back deck falling off. I mean, it was a lot of stuff.
I know, that's a good point though, because we do work with people that have, you know, they have budget restrictions. It's really hard for them, and we're both really understanding to that. We know people can't just, you know, gut bathrooms and just, you know, fix a, you know, deck, you know, rebuild the whole deck and things like that, and you
Right.
know, that's part of it too, like understanding what people need. So when we give you this list, and people are listening to this, we do make adjustments and pivot pretty quickly to what you need. You know, it's not a one size fits all. Like you said, one of your agents said there's a lot of moving parts, and that's no different when we are listing properties.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I just think that that's why you got to look at each situation and deal with it differently. And that's why, you know, you got to get the realtor out there early. You know, we're not going to strong arm you the first time we go out. Just let's talk about your situation.
No, we get a bad reputation for that. They think like we run in with the contract in our hand. You know, and of course we'd love for you to sign the contract, but you know, I've walked into listing appointments just knowing the personality of the seller. Like I didn't bring it. I didn't bring a contract. Like,
Yes,
you know,
exactly. Yeah,
like you just kind of you read the room. You know, you read the room.
right. I mean, when I had a stager come in my house in Gloucester when I was selling it, it was rental property for quite a while. And she handed me this list. And it was a big list. I mean, she was the type of girl that would come in and she'd, you know, flip countertops, sand floors, paint the whole thing. She was an extensive stager. She was more like construction. So she hands me the list and I saw the bill and I was like,
Wow.
whoa. I needed some time to take it in. And then once I got that time,
Yes, right.
right, right, right.
Yeah, and it's all about the investment. That's an investment. That's not a loss.
Right. This was about $25,000. I mean, I got it back. She did a great job on the house, but when I first saw it, I wasn't prepared for that, so I needed time to think about it. And I didn't live in the house, so it wasn't, you know, I hadn't been in the house for a while.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I
100%.
Yeah. So I think the moral of the story here, Matt, is that there is definitely a long timeline from thinking about closing and thinking about selling your house to actually getting it on the market and then actually closing. There's a long process. This could take 6 or 7 months sometimes. So if you're having in your head you're going to sell the house in March, or April or May, I see a lot of people wait too late in the spring market, and then you're bucking up against, you know, like Father's Day and then the spring market's around the corner. You've missed all that coming soon marketing, things like that. So I think it's never too early. So I think I just actually sent those postcards out that Al was recommending to show
Mhm.
sellers the timeline of when things happen. So yeah, those just went out. I just
Hmm.
wanted people to know it does take a while.
Yeah, definitely. You can't start too early and get the process going. All right, really good session today. If you have any questions, free to reach out to us. Debbie, what's your direct cell phone number if they want to call you?
It's 978-771-9909.
Okay, and I'm Matt Witte at 978-273-0099. We'll see you next time.